This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
The International Energy Agency trimmed its forecast of next year's global oil supply glut for the first time since May on Thursday, flagging higher demand prospects due to a stronger world economy and lower supply from nations under sanctions. Oil prices have been under pressure for months due to predictions from the IEA, which advises industrialized countries and other analysts of a looming glut. Global oil supply will exceed demand by 3.84 million barrels per day, according to figures from the Paris-based IEA's latest monthly oil market report, down from a 4.09 million barrels of oil per day surplus estimated in November.
OPEC said on Thursday that the wider OPEC Plus oil producer group nudged up output in November as 8 OPEC Plus members pressed ahead with another production increase, and it maintained forecasts for relatively strong growth in demand next year. OPEC Plus pumped 43.06 million barrels per day of crude in November, OPEC said in a monthly report, up 43,000 barrels of oil per day from the previous month. Demand for OPEC Plus crude will average 42.6 million barrels of oil per day in the first quarter of 2026 and 43 million barrels of oil per day for the full year, OPEC's report said.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
US President Donald Trump's plan for peace in Ukraine includes proposals to restore Russian energy flows to Europe, major US investment in Russian rare earths and energy, and tapping frozen Russian sovereign assets, The Wall Street Journal said. The newspaper said the plans were detailed in appendices to peace proposals handed to European counterparts over recent weeks. They include a plan for U.S. financial firms and other businesses to tap $200 billion of frozen Russian sovereign assets for projects in Ukraine, including a major new data center powered by the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant now controlled by Russian forces, the paper said.
The U.S. has seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, President Donald Trump said on Wednesday, a move that sent oil prices higher and sharply escalated tensions between Washington and Caracas. "We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large, largest one ever, actually, and other things are happening," said Trump, who has been pressuring Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down. In response, the Venezuelan government in a statement accused the U.S. of blatant theft and described the seizure as an act of international piracy. It said it would denounce the incident before international bodies. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Prices of iron ore futures slid on Thursday on elevated concerns over demand in top consumer China fueled by weakening steel consumption that has outweighed hopes of policy signals from Beijing's high-level meeting. The most traded iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange closed daytime trade 1.3% lower at 757 yuan, $107.22, a metric ton. The benchmark January iron ore on the Singapore Exchange slipped 1.36% to $101.35 a ton as of 07:02 GMT.
Chile's mining investment is expected to reach $104.549 billion from this year through 2034, state-run agency Cochilco said on Thursday, up 26% from last year's forecast. Chile is the world's largest producer of copper and second largest of lithium, a key ingredient of rechargeable batteries. New investment includes an expansion at BHP's Escondida, the world's biggest copper mine, and new concentrators at Collahuasi, a copper mine jointly owned by Anglo American and Glencore.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
U.S. wheat futures rebounded on Thursday, supported by a weaker dollar, having fallen nearly 1% in the previous session after the U.S. Department of Agriculture raised its global output estimates, cementing expectations for ample supply. Corn also bounced back while soybean edged higher, extending its rise after the USDA news story sales of 136,000 metric tons of U.S. beans to China, another 331,000 tons to undisclosed destinations and 120,000 tons of soy meal to Poland. The most active wheat contract on the Chicago Board of Trade was up 0.7% at $5.33 minus 1/2 a bushel at 12:30 GMT, after falling to $5.25 minus 1/4 on Wednesday, its lowest since October 31st.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.